This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the show designed to bring you the trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around you. My goal is to find guests who can speak about those trends in such a way that listening to them will make us a little bit better at whatever it is that we do. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center of Real Estate, housed at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. Medicine is always a field with trends that are taking giant leaps forward. We don't notice them as much, perhaps, because most of us, our hands aren't in that field day in and day out. But behind the scenes, they're making some incredible leaps forward. And I give the example of the extraordinary work that it took to create this antidote to the virus, or this inoculation. What's the word I'm looking for? The shot. Let's call it the shot. To eliminate the virus. I mean, that was an extraordinary amount of work done in a short amount of time. And from what I've read, many of the processes and the procedures that were utilized in developing the vaccine, there's the word, had never been used before and are now going to become standard practice going forward, making future vaccines come to market a little bit more quickly. One of the areas where there's always a giant leap forward, but we don't see it because we're not in the field, is in orthopedics. It's amazing the things that these companies are developing and these surgeons are utilizing to put into our body to replace the bones that we were born with. And one area that has historically been overlooked in orthopedics is ankle and feet. It turns out I bumped into an old friend of mine. He and I were classmates at Tulane years ago, and he is now an ankle and foot specialist here in Mobile. I didn't know that. And in talking to him about what's going on in his field, realized he is a perfect target for this show because of the extraordinary trends that he's seeing and the extraordinary products that are being brought to his marketplace. So when we come back from break, I'm going to have Dr. Ramon Rodriguez in the studio with me. He and I are going to do our best to not swap wartime stories of back in the day in school, and instead focusing on his practice and what it actually he does with his patients and what these great leaps forward are and what he expects for both his specialty as well as the field of orthopedics in the future. Prior to break, though, I want to remind you about my friends at Sandifer Wealth Management. Absolutely some of the most professional people you'll come across when it comes to planning your future financially. If you're questioning whether you have enough to last in retirement, if you question whether you're saving enough today and you're not yet retired, if someday you want to offer a 401k to your team or to your employees, I want you to reach out to Jamie Sandifer and Mark Salyers at Sandifer Wealth Management. You'll find that they're some of the most capable and professional and kind and family-oriented people you'll meet. They want to help you. You can find them online at Sandifer Wealth Management. Enter Sandifer Wealth Management, Mobile, Alabama in your Google search bar. It'll come up. They're on Old Shell Road. And when you find their website, you can quickly get their phone number or interact with them through that website. When we're back from break, Dr. Ramon Rodriguez talking about the future of foot and ankle specialists in the orthopedic world, as well as perhaps the future of orthopedics itself. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center of Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be right back. This is Cam Marston. The Alabama Commercial Real Estate Conference and Expo will be held on Friday, February 11th at The Club in Birmingham. It's the state's premier commercial real estate conference. The connections made with peers across the state could very well lead to your next big transaction. To quote one attendee, if you aspire to be relevant in real estate in Alabama, you can't afford to not go. Go to acrecom.info to learn more. That's acrecom.info to learn more. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm in the studio today with an old friend of mine, Dr. Ramon Rodriguez. He and I were classmates at Tulane together back in the day, and when I bumped into him a couple of weeks ago, we reconnected. Turns out he's moved from New Orleans to Mobile to be the new foot and ankle guy at the Alabama Orthopaedic Group. We started talking a little bit about the trends in his business after I told him about the radio show, and after he responded, there's a lot of content here. So I said, you need to be on with me. Ramon, thank you for your time. Welcome so much to What's Working.
Thank you, Cam.
It's nice to see you again.
It's awesome seeing you again.
Your family, and I know we don't want to go too far down this trail, but your family was so generous to me back in the day as I went to Tulane, and you guys were kind of a shelter in the storm as I was getting my college feet under me, and I'll never be able to thank you or them enough. Of all the brothers and sisters of your family, you are the least nice of them all, and yet here we are together.
Well, thanks. That's a great compliment.
Yes, it is. You come from a great family. You fell far from the tree, but you come from a great family. Yeah. So tell me what's going on with you. Obviously, you're the new foot and ankle guy at the Alabama Orthopaedic Group, but catch me up. Tell me a little bit about your education, your training, and then let's get into what's going on the business side of your world these days.
Right. Well, I didn't go directly into medicine. I worked for a couple of years after college, but then I went back to medical school and I trained here at University of South Alabama in the Department of Orthopedics under the late Fred Meyer. I later went and did a foot and ankle fellowship in Birmingham with Dr. John Gould and Dr. Angus McBride. We then went back to Louisiana, where I worked for the last 14 years, 10 of which were at Tulane, and I ran the Department of Foot and Ankle Orthopedics at Tulane. And I was recently contacted by my new partners at Alabama Orthopaedic about an opportunity to come join them for foot and ankle orthopedic care here in their practice.
My understanding is that the foot and ankle side of the orthopedic practice is growing due to some pretty incredible new technologies, new awarenesses of how these parts of our body work. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. When you look at just injuries in themselves, many of the athletic injuries that we encounter are foot and ankle related, and you'll see that on Sundays and Saturdays when we're watching football. But many of those injuries are foot and ankle related. The industry has recognized that, in the foot, there's 27 bones in the foot, and so they're making plates and screws for all these specific joints, and then there's a lot of efforts to invest into total ankle replacements and things like this. This is part of the interest that I have as well.
So the total knee replacement I'm aware of, just because I know people mostly older than me, and it's certainly probably my future, the total knee replacements have been a fairly common thing over the years. But it wasn't until you and I spoke that I became aware of something called a total ankle replacement. I mean, how new is it? Is it 10 years old? Is it 5 years old?
Well, it's older than that. It's the early parts of foot and ankle replacements failed miserably, and we're now on our third generation of ankle replacement, and that has been a new design where they put the fixation in the one bone as opposed to the entire structure. So there's now, where there was only one company doing ankle replacements when in the late 90s, now there are about 9 different total ankles on the market with a couple more in production. So the industry has recognized that there is a market here for ankle replacement. Now, ankle replacements are only about 1/100th of what knee replacements are. So where you have 100 total knees go in or more, you'll get one ankle replacement. So it's kind of a specialized market, and there's only very few of us that do them. So
Is it because that the people don't recognize the need for ankle replacement? Is it because that knees tend to get damaged more quickly than ankles? Is there a day in the future where there will be 100 ankle replacements to 100 knee replacements?
I don't think so. I think that there's no difference in incidence of ankle injuries, I don't believe, that between knee and ankle. The design of the ankle being a very suitable, acceptable. An ankle fusion is a very viable option. You can put the ankle at neutral, and that person can function very well. So the gold standard for many years has been ankle fusion. What I find is that my clients don't want to have just a neutral ankle that doesn't move. They desire to get into athletic activities. When you fuse the ankle, there is a price to pay where it doesn't move, so there's higher forces that get transmitted to the hip, the knee, and the back, and other parts of the foot. So the clientele is driving the need for to push the envelope for us to design implants that can sustain the forces that are related to the ankle, and that's the exciting thing, is that that's where you're trying to meet the needs of your clientele, but with the restrictions of the human body. We have the knee is about 3 times the size of the ankle, so the forces are 3 times greater in the ankle than you're seeing at the knee, which for mechanics and load and when you look at the engineering side, the forces that are there are far greater, so it's a little bit more difficult. So I don't know that it's going to. I think there will be more in the future, but with a limitation.
Oh yeah. So did I understand you correctly? When you fuse the ankle stops moving, but it transfers new issues to the knee and the hip.
Absolutely.
So you may solve an ankle pain, but you're likely going to get a knee and a hip pain.
Correct. You're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. So there may be people listening out there that got their ankle fused, and they're thinking, dang, I got it fused. That's when I thought that was the right thing to do, but I now have hip and knee issues. Can I bring my ankle to Dr. Rodriguez and have him fix this so that my knee and hip go away, or is it once fused, always fused?
No, that's a great question.
You're darn right it's a great question. That's my business, man.
Well, no, so there is the opportunity to depending on the technique of how you had your ankle fused, you may be a candidate to have a fusion takedown. And but you have to have a fibula to have an ankle replacement. So that means the fibula is the small bone on the outside of the ankle that you feel the knob on the outside of your ankle right by your shoe. If you don't have that bone, which sometimes is sacrificed to do the fusion, then that would preclude you from really having an ankle replacement. Now, there's been some people who've done a fibula allograft, meaning to take a cadaver bone and put it in. That's a little crazy. I mean, you could do it, but if you have a very functioning ankle fusion, I don't know that you really go and have an ankle fusion takedown to have the ankle replacement. Now, mind you, the structures on the side haven't seen force because they've been fused for whatever period of time from your fusion, so that bone isn't as hard and isn't as good, so you could be creating a bigger problem by taking the fusion down and going in with a replacement.
So considering the newness of what we're talking about here in the medical field, and after you sent me your CV today, so I'd have a little bit of an indication of what you've done since you and I saw each other last in the early 90s, I would bet that you've got to be. There can't be too many of you out there. This is too new for I can walk down the street and swing a dead cat and I'm going to knock over a knee replacement surgeon. They're everywhere. And I'm offending many of my friends out there. I'm hoping they're rolling their eyes. But there can't be a whole lot of ankle people out there. And from what I see in your CV, you've lectured on this thing 18 times. Now, it could be it was in your kitchen, but there are 18 different lectures out there that you've done on this technique. Talk to me about...
I think one of them was when I talked to you the other day.
I did notice that one was on the list. But there can't be a lot of expertise out there yet.
That's true. There's a small field. I mean, I told some residents who I used to teach that, when they were a medical student or a resident, I was like, look, this might be the only total ankle you see in your career. If this isn't what you do and this isn't the field that you go into, that you very well may not see this operation again. It is something that's gaining traction, but there's not a lot of us that are trained to do it. The knee, I've done many total knees and I've done many total hips in my career. But the ankle has been something that's a bit more, it's challenging to do, and it's been quite fun and interesting to do. We do some interesting things with technology and how we integrate the CT to try and design the operations directly for the patient. And that's been a neat venture that we've gotten into with the companies to design this operation to be better for the patient.
So they'll do a scan of the ankle, a CT scan of the ankle, and build something uniquely for that patient.
Absolutely.
And they'll ship it to you via UPS, and you open it up, you wash it in the sink, and then you put it in.
It comes in a sterile box, and they package that, and you put it on the back table, and that guide that is made of the specific bone spurs that the patient has. It has a unique number of markers that you put that onto the bone, and then you'll pin that in place, and then they'll give us our guides to proceed with the operation.
Is that not fascinating to you?
Oh, it's awesome. It's something that it's so starting in the venture of how I started, I kind of came through this with the older technology and then was embraced by the newer things. And it's really kind of been a neat venture to go down that road and to design these operations for patients has been really great.
So you described yourself to me when you and I were visiting a couple weeks ago as a carpenter.
That's exactly right.
Tell me about that.
So, I am a carpenter, I don't work in wood. I don't work in marble. I work in bones. And so I literally will have to reconstruct things and rebuild them with what the body gives me.
And is that changing? Let's look into the future. There's been extraordinary leaps forward. The show is about trends in business. What do you think the future looks like before we go to break?
Well, I think that is actually something that is, it actually, I think you have to kind of learn with your hands first. And I'm a little worried that the next generation will be doing it by computer and maybe not have that craftsmanship that I was trained with and my fellow colleagues have been trained with.
Yeah.
So I think you run the risk nowadays of being a one-trick pony. You can't get it done the way the new robot teaches you, and you may not be able to do it. Several of my colleagues and I have talked about that.
Yeah. I'm with Dr. Ramon Rodriguez, an old friend of mine, LSU medical school graduate, Tulane undergraduate, which is what makes him truly special. That's my undergraduate as well. We're talking about trends in the orthopedic business. He is the new guy here locally in Mobile with the Alabama Orthopaedic Group on ankles and feet. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be right back after this break. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the University of Alabama.
'64, that's when Keith Air Conditioning opened their doors.
In my family, turn to the experts is more than a tagline. It's a promise. Every Keith technician is an experienced AC professional, and that saves you money. Speaking of money, how about 0% financing for up to 60 months on installations of new Carrier systems? Keith and Carrier, turn to the experts.
Mobile's leading name in comfort since 1964.
License number 83731.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm in the studio today with Dr. Ramon Rodriguez, foot and ankle specialist at the Alabama Orthopaedic Group. We're talking about trends in orthopedics with the specialty around ankles and feet because of the remarkable advances in technologies that have been brought to it. By the way, What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed at the University of Alabama. Ramon, or Dr. Rodriguez, now that you're high and mighty, Dr. Rodriguez.
You can just call me Dr. Ramon. That's
Dr.
fine.
Ramon. Is the lifestyle of people out there today generating a new or a new type of ankle injury? Are they generating more ankle injuries? Do you see a future of lots of business because of the way people are living?
Well, there's there's already lots of business, but you're looking at lifestyles, and our society has gotten more active in the last quarter century. I mean, I think people are now more athletic, doing more jumping, doing just people who are, we used to say the people who are 70 today were 50, they're now, so they're just, people are healthier and their bone quality is better the older they get, and old is, I'm in my early 50s, so I'm not old, right? So, but when I was 20, somebody my age was really old.
Yeah.
So people are living more healthier lives, and they are out doing things. Well, the ankle isn't foot, and the ankle and foot are, trends have been that they're the highest injuries that are seen in emergency rooms and things like this. So we are seeing more athletic ankle injuries. We're seeing people who are, they're weekend warriors. They're rupturing their Achilles. They're drilling their ankles. They're breaking their ankles. And then you also have these Lisfranc injuries you might have seen on Sunday football that you hear about your player, or you hear about them having this high ankle sprain and these types of things. And then in the workplace, we're also seeing it. I mean, with people, the industry has been focused on trying to decrease the incidence of or of injuries in themselves. Being able to clean up the workspace and that kind of stuff, to not having workers who are impaired and be more alert, that decrease the incidence of injuries. And we're trying to help our work partners to try and identify what is the risks associated with what's causing people to get hurt, and we're trying to decrease that incidence. Society's not getting smaller, right? I mean, we have 330 million people living in this country now, and that's only going to go up. But, what we've tried to do with our work partners is try to get them to identify injuries early, try to get them into clinics early, nip it in the bud, identify it, nip it in the bud, and get a quicker result on that. Sometimes it's not possible, and there's horrific injuries, but a lot of times we can identify something before it becomes a problem. And, maybe it's just as you get them in, you see them, and you get them into a therapy program where they can get stronger so they don't get hurt. Yeah. So that's a really big trend, and I love that part of my business, seeing a patient and trying to get them into a work rehab program that would identify them, put them in a brace that maybe they'll have an ankle that's unstable. You put them in a brace and in a regimen of therapy that will make them more stable and healthy so they don't hurt themselves.
What about the attitude from back in the day of my ankle hurts, and someone looks at you and says, hey, rub some Tough on it, you cupcake. Rub some Tough on it. You'll be fine. Walk it off. Things of that nature. Where's the line between this is serious, I need to see an expert, and, I need to rub some Tough on it and walk it off?
Well, I think that's very valid. I think that you can't, there is something, but I'd say there's something between pain and, kind of discomfort, right? So I think there's a real difference. So somebody who's working out and has some discomfort, well, that's misinterpreted sometimes as pain, and that's not what we're looking at. We're trying.
Let me stop you there, because this is fascinating to me. There is a difference between discomfort and pain.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that before we go into whatever you were about to say.
Well, I mean, I think that if you're having something that hurts, you worked and you ran to 5 miles, or you're a workout warrior and you just overdid it. Maybe you were working out, you're trying to get, we're in the early part of the year. Everybody's back on their New Year's resolutions, and they're going out and they're going to go and run their 5 miles because that's what they used to do. Well, they haven't done it in 5 years. Well, that person's going to break down. So they could actually get hurt and have a real injury. Whereas if you were running 5 miles on a regular basis and you'd have some discomfort after you ran your miles, then that's a little different than the person who's trying to get back into the game and just an overuse injury syndrome. And there may be something that mechanically was off on the person, which when they were doing things on a routine basis, they were able to work through it and endure. Now it's becoming a problem, and they're mechanically at a disadvantage, and they're putting a tendon or an ankle ligament or something like that at risk, and they will that they might have a real injury there.
So is there a way that I can self-diagnose in the moment and say this is a wound, this is an injury, versus this is discomfort?
Well, I mean, I think we look at the symptoms of swelling, and we look at the symptoms of difficulty bearing weight, and also when is the routine? How early in an exercise regimen does something happen? Is it always on a certain, parameter that they are experiencing the discomfort? So they're going for their run, half a mile into the run, they routinely have the discomfort, and it's right here, it's right in this location. That's something that's meaningful to me, and can help me go down the road of a diagnosis.
You're like a detective at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And patients frequently tell us, in the interview, 97% of diagnosis is in when I talk to you.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So all these charges I get for the X-rays and the MRI didn't really need them.
Well, we need them because of some medical legal things, but again, I don't have X-ray vision, so there are some, we still have parameters of alignment and the way the bones are shaped, and we can see fractures and things like that, and soft tissue injuries that we can see. The MRI is great at seeing those ligaments. It's getting even better, so I don't think it helps, but the interview will lead me to the diagnosis very often. Yeah. So and then the other stuff's confirming it. But I mean, our forefathers didn't have this MRI. They didn't have this, they did have X-rays for many years, but I mean, it's something that has gotten better. Yeah. And those other tools are helping us confirm. And it's nice to have a confirmation of what you know clinically with the data that comes behind.
Did you choose ankles and feet because the future of the business, or did you choose ankle and feet because, I don't know, what led you to that decision?
That's crazy. So when I was training, my father was also an orthopedic surgeon, and he matriculated to the foot and ankle realm. And so my professors here at South, kind of asked me questions about feet and ankles, because my father, like, your father's a genius in this, so you must be. So, but it also came naturally to me. It was something that did have. I did my fellowship in Birmingham because I wasn't comfortable with my foot and ankle diagnosis. So I was like, I need to bone that up. I need to get more training in that. And I went and worked up there for a couple months with the late Dr. John Gould, and it was fascinating to see the athletic injuries that were coming through and the reconstructive operations that we was doing, and it just it just worked. But yes, there were a need for foot and ankle. And, in being a foot and ankle surgeon, I get to wear multiple hats, where my joint arthroplasty friends, they do two operations. They do a hip replacement or knee replacement. But I get to wear many different hats. I get to be a traumatologist, I get to fix fractures. I get to be a sports medicine guy because I get to fix ankle ligament repairs, and I can do Lisfranc injuries that are and then I also get to do reconstructive surgery. So it's fascinating. My work doesn't get stale. Yeah. I'm always doing something, and I'm wearing multiple hats, and that's really been the fascinating thing and what I really enjoy about what I do.
You feast on a banquet of broken down different types of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you love them.
Absolutely.
And if everybody would, if they would. When you're watching football on Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, and you're looking out there on the field, it reminds me of the story of the orthopedic surgeons who sit at the bottom of the ski slopes out in Colorado going, look at all this money coming down the slopes. All these people.
Yeah, they were the first ones to do ACLs like acutely.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else would wait, but they got to them before they got swollen. So they were able to do the ACL at the bottom of the hill and then send you back to your home for your rehab. Yeah. Dr. Stedman made millions out of it in Vail doing that. So,
really?
Yeah.
And can you see, like when you're watching football, let's take the NFL was on Sunday. I was watching quite a few of those games. Can you watch those games and say, oh, I know exactly what happened when they replay it?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, the national championship game, you kind of knew right away that the wide receiver from Alabama, you knew he wasn't coming back in the game.
That left knee.
That was done. So unfortunately for him, but he'll be fine. He should do well with that, though. It's a good reconstructive operation.
Yeah.
You can never guarantee it, but,
the frequency of that operation, the awareness of what went wrong makes his repair a likely success.
I would expect that he would get, not guaranteeing it, but I would expect that he would come back and be okay.
If I get an ankle replacement, how long will that custom-made piece last me?
So at this moment, we anticipate with the newer materials that we're using and the reconstructive options, we anticipate that that'll be about a 10 or 15 year endeavor. So that's why we've kind of limited it in its inception to the patients who are in their 70s, maybe 60s. Now I've gotten into where I've done them in many people in their 50s and 40s. I haven't really gone younger than that. Although there are some ankles out there that I've seen that a person comes in at 25 and I'm like, you need an ankle. You would do well with an ankle replacement, but it scares me that because anytime you go in and do one, there's a shelf life.
Yeah,
and that person, their time life will outlast the shelf life of their replacement.
Why can't we make a fake ankle that lasts longer? I mean, I got bones that are going to last longer. Why can't I make a fake one out of plastic or steel? Well,
you can, but the problem is the host, right? So the bone, the limiting factor is our bone, right? It's not the materials that we're using. It's the materials that we're using are going to be here for hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to go away. The bones are the ones that will limit, and the tendons and the bones are what limits that. So
it's not the material; it's my body that's going to ultimately fail on the replacement. Ramon Rodriguez, Dr. Ramon Rodriguez, is the new foot and ankle guy at the Alabama Orthopaedic Group. A great friend of mine from back in the day. We had a wonderful reunion when I spotted him across the room several weeks ago, and in our conversation at that day, I realized this guy is a perfect guest based on what he's doing. Very innovative stuff. The show focuses on trends. We are discussing trends in the foot and ankle business. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to What's Working, brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. Real estate is a relationship business. Whether you're young and inexperienced or an industry veteran, the connections you'll make at the Alabama Commercial Real Estate Conference and Expo on Friday, February 11th in Birmingham will be with the most relevant players in the industry. It's the premier commercial real estate conference in the state. To see the list of speakers, to get info on continuing education credits, and how to become a sponsor and to register, go to acrecom.info. That's acrecom.info. Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. I'm in the studio today. Dr. Ramon Rodriguez, the new foot and ankle guy at the Alabama Orthopaedic Group. Dr. Ramon, my question is, with as busy as you are, with busy as your partners are in the practice, you got hands-on patients all day long. How do you stay up on the trends? I mean, what if somebody has an extraordinary leap forward out there in your specialty, And as busy as you are, you don't find out about it for 5 years. They don't email you and say, hey, I got a new idea. How does that work?
So, we have, there's several different ways that happens, So we have a responsibility for continuing education to keep our license. Okay. So we have to have a certain number of hours of book and a certain number of hours of in-presence learning, continuing education learning that we have to go through. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So I have an interest in, I'm a foot and ankle surgeon. So there's meetings that are in the country that are designed for the Foot and Ankle Society to get together, and they'll put together a podium of new people who are doing stuff, that presenting papers from residents and educational people or clinicians that have gotten onto a trend of something that they've done, and they will report their data. So we are all scientists in a sense, and we will go and do that continuing education in our specific subset of specialty. Then industry has also been very instrumental in, they have a new anchor or they have a new plate and screws or a new whatever that they're trying out and they want us to use. Well, we'll go to their lab and they'll get their industry people to teach us how to use it. And then we will practice on some cadavers with that. And then we'll integrate that into our practice. And but it's after I've tested it out, I've got my hands on it, I've felt how it works, and then being a clinician, I can kind of, and a carpenter, I can kind of feel like how it feels, and I can kind of use that and, put that into my practice, see if, then I don't have to analyze it personally. I'll have to look at my patients and kind of self-reflect and look at those, and maybe I'll pull the data and say, okay, well, Cam came to me and my other colleague came to me and I did this operation on him. With the new advance, Cam got better twice as fast as the next person.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that resonates. You can see it in the charts, and I can kind of find how, I'm not seeing that person back because they're better, or God forbid, I've seen this person forever because they didn't work out right, Yeah. And so, and not that it's, it's still the practice of medicine. We're just trying to, we try to be, good fiduciaries and try to test things out that are, we trust our industry that they're doing things that are giving the good processes, they give us good quality material, and then we're able to put that into play.
So I'm going to tell you a story here. And by the way, you've described yourself today as a detective, as a carpenter, and as a fiduciary.
Well, it's just jobs that I just didn't get a chance to do.
Yeah, that's right. All part of your degree that you didn't know came along with it. And I'm the only one that's called you a doctor. You haven't even called yourself a doctor yet. Right. But let me tell you the story. And this, and the question that I just asked you about how do you stay sharp comes from a real experience of mine. And I'm going to try to keep this brief, and I'm going to make sure that it can point to no one specifically. My son hurt his elbow years ago. We went into the orthopedist office after it was triaged for a couple of days. And one of this orthopedist partners, this was back in the day, went to his car when they saw us in that office, and using his cell phone called a buddy of ours, a mutual friend, and said, hey, get Cam and his wife and his son out of that office. That doctor, partner of mine, shouldn't be touching that kid. And it made me wonder, what happens to these rogue doctors? Are there rogue doctors? Is this guy not keeping up with his training, his practice? And it makes me, so it has led to the following. When I step into the doctor's office with a knee issue, with an arm issue, with an ankle issue, whatever it may be, I make the assumption that they're up to speed on the newest and best technologies. But there's no way for me to test that. There's no way for me to double check that. I can't stop the doctor and say, wait a minute, where was the last conference and when was the last CE credits that you got in your job? Right. React to that for me.
Well, I mean, that is a, I can just talk from personal experience that, I frequently, come from a very large family and have married a very large family, and I'm often asked, by friends and family, I've got such and such, what do I do about it? And so I will routinely say, well, you've got this shoulder injury. Well, I'll triage it, but I'll get you to see the right person that I know who's accomplished in that locally. And it's kind of like, I guess, what my father did. He kind of self-referred us and triaged us and kind of got us to the person. Now, probably we did not get the right treatment a lot of times. We were sort of neglected. DHR was going to come after us.
Yeah.
But we try to, I know who my colleagues are and kind of what their specialty and what their niche is, and I will get them into the person that I want them to be with. So, and I do that now. I mean, I wear multiple hats at the clinic now, and my practice, I'm building my practice, so I'm actually seeing multiple injuries, and I'm getting them to see my colleagues who are more adept and more up to date on those techniques.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I do it.
Is there a peer pressure amongst doctors to stay up to date? If you have a buddy who says, I haven't been to a conference in forever, I do the easiest, quickest CE credits I can do, I run them on the computer while I'm, cooking in the background or something like that. Is there a peer pressure to hold one another accountable to stay sharp?
I mean, I think we have you have to self-guide that. I mean, I think that's something that comes from within, that you want to be good and, adequate for your patients. If you don't have that, responsibility to yourself to keep yourself educated, then I think that's where, it ultimately lies. I don't think that I can tell you, oh, you went to a crappy conference and you got, 35 hours and, you didn't do anything. Well, I can't really judge you. I mean, I just can only judge myself and how I went about my training. But, if I'm seeing you, if I have a patient who, maybe I'm not going to send them to you because you owned up to that. You're not staying up to date. And I think that's something, but I think that all comes from within. I think the person has to be self-motivated to do that education themselves.
So I'm in a cab in New Orleans years ago, and I'm talking to the cab driver, and I said, all right, so New Orleans gets tons of conferences. What is your favorite conference, cab driver? What do you like the most? Who tips the most in the conference? And immediately, without even a pause, he says, when the orthopedists come to town. They're a competitive group. Right. They want to out-tip each other, and that's what he was talking about, his tip income. When the orthopedists pile into my cab, they're all boasting about who's going to pay the cab fare. He said, and I'll never forget this term, the orthopedists are like cowboys. They swagger. They have a gun on their hips. Talk to me about the culture of being an orthopedist.
I mean, there is, so orthopedics is very selective. They're not getting the person who's the bottom of the class to be an orthopedic surgeon. Orthopedics is probably one of the higher incomes of physicians in the industry. And so people who are handsy people who like to work with their hands, who are extremely well educated and have high, they have the high it factor. Those are the guys who are going into orthopedics. So, and they, that comes with, being brash and kind of getting in there and wanting to outdo your colleague, and pick up that tab and to shine.
It's all a part of the culture.
Absolutely.
I know one female orthopedist. How many do you know?
Well, so actually that's very interesting because at Tulane we had probably the most diverse residency program in the country. We had, I want to say, 3 to 5 female residents throughout the 10 years that I was there. Per time that you looked at it, we had between 3 and 5 girls in the class. Like one class had 2 females. Actually, 2 classes had 2 females in them. So we had multiple females. We always had a female aboard. It is a boys' club, okay? When you look at the national scene, it is a boys' club, but it has become more diverse. And I can tell you some of the most talented people I've worked with are the females that I've worked with. They've got the more drive than the man does, and they are equally talented.
Do they fight to pick up the tip? Is that a part of the female orthopedic culture as well?
I don't know if they're doing that. So
they're smarter.
Right.
They're smarter. They're not as competitive, but they are smarter. Now, one of my orthopedist buddies told me being an orthopedist requires a lot of strength. I mean, there are things that you have to do that take a lot of muscle and leverage and things like that. And that he said, if you were to be watching through the window, Cam, you wouldn't believe the effort we have to put into these things from time when we're in the operating position.
Well, that's true, but what you said in there was very important, leverage. So these females have been, or the person has not changed in size, right? They have just adapted, and they figured out how to mechanically get something more favorable to them to be able to do what I do. Mm-hmm. So, but they didn't change their body all of a sudden to become an orthopedic surgeon.
No. But I was surprised to learn how much strength it takes to do some of the things that you all do.
But sometimes you got to work smarter and not harder.
Yeah.
So you got to, you can maybe get anesthesia. Well, why don't you give them the muscle relaxer so I can do what I need to do?
Right.
So as opposed to me, brute forcing it.
Right.
So there's some things that can actually go wrong when I come in cowboy-like and I try to overpower it.
Right.
If I can work more mechanically favorable, I may be able to do it more with kind of more panache.
Yeah.
So
you doing it with panache.
Yeah, you like that?
I love that. I love that. I have to say, I wish I knew you were doing this back when I fell into a gopher hole, believe it or not, in Glacier National Park.
Was it February 2nd?
No. I fell in a gopher hole, tore my ankle to bits, and drove from Glacier National Park to Montana to Mobile, Alabama with that ankle swollen the size of a grapefruit inside a softball or something. It was huge and it hurt real bad, and it's never been the same. But it doesn't hurt as bad as it used to. But at the time, I thought I'm just going to rub some Tough on it. I'm gonna drive home. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive home to see Mom. So I went across the country with this broken foot and terrible pain, and it was I'll never forget it. Well, we're coming to a close here. Welcome back to Mobile, my friend. You did your residency, that right, in South?
I worked to South Alabama for my residency.
Yeah.
And I finished in 2006.
Yeah. And I hope you have a long and fruitful career here. It'll be fun to rekindle our friendship over the years.
Oh, I am very much looking forward to it.
There's somebody out there that's going, how do I find this dude? How do they find this dude?
So we are at the Alabama Orthopaedic Clinic. We have 2 locations. We're right there on, right across from Lowe's off of I-65 and on the Western Service Road and right on the campus of Spring Hill Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
And then we have a second location in Saraland. But yes, you contact us, the 251-410-3600, and we can be reached there for appointments.
And you can ask for Dr. Ramon Rodriguez. You'll just say, I'm looking for the detective and the carpenter guy that I heard on the radio. They'll know exactly who they're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you're listening to What's Working. Thank you, Ramon.
Thank you, Cam.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. We'll be right back after this with final comments.
This is Cam Marston. The Keith family has provided service to my heating and cooling system since my family and I moved into our home 12 years ago. And today, Keith Air Conditioning offers 0% financing for up to 60 months on new installations, making a new heating or cooling system for your home even easier to come by. Give them a call or find them online and let them come work their magic. Keith and Carrier. Turn to the experts.
Hey, this is T. Bruce McKinnon. I'm the president and CEO of Elevator World and Bay Business News. And when I'm not traveling the world, looking over elevators or trying to find news for the local business community, I'm listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. Now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today. Remember, you can find Dr. Rodriguez at the Alabama Orthopaedic Clinic. That'll wrap us up this week. John Thompson is the show's producer. He's with Eyeon Digital. Check him out, EYEON Digital. We'd love it if you'd follow us on all the social media things that you can find. If you look for Cam Marston on social media, if you've got feedback, email me directly, cam@KMarston.com.
cammarston.com, CAMMARSTON.com. Love to hear your ideas and your suggestions. You can find the podcast at whatsworkingcam.com. Have a good week, everybody.